Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. Tonight, Barry Littleton is with us. Tomorrow night is Fader Night. Open lines all night long. Tonight, it's Barry. Barry is a graduate in psychology, sociology, and ethics studies from Wichita State University. And for the last 2 decades, Barry has been involved in administration for at-risk youth, including cognitive behavioral modification and managing aggressive behavior. He's also an options stock trader. He has researched and practiced several aspects of the spiritual, metaphysical, and paranormal. His story is amazing, and it has been a life of contact. And I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, Barry Littleton. And, of course, his website is BarryLittleton.com. The links are over at Jimmy Church Radio. Barry, how are you, man?
I'm good, Jimmy. How you doing?
You know, you're one of our favorite guests. Do you feel the warmth, the vibe? This audience is just Barry's here. Can you feel it? Can you feel it?
That's wonderful. I thank everybody for that.
Well, we thank you. We thank you. And Barry, let's actually let's turn back time a little bit. And I don't know if you heard my introduction to you in the show tonight during the intro, but going back to the first time that we met, and I approached you, and we ended up hanging out. We had never met before. I had never heard your story before. And we ended up hanging out for 3 or 4 days after that, and it was a great way to start not only a friendship, but your relationship with Fade to Black and Coast to Coast in this audience. But immediately after that, you were on Fade to Black, and then you were on Coast to Coast. Then we brought you back to Fade to Black. Of course, you're here with us tonight, and you were exposed to this UFO community in a pretty short order. And the reaction from everybody has just been phenomenal, hasn't it? Well, they've embraced you. You're now part of this community.
I thank everybody for that, and I didn't expect that. As I told you when we were privately talking, I thought when I was at SETI the last time, I was pretty much going to be out of this, and no one else would be listening to me at that point. That was 2 years ago. So, and not just that, but I had suffered 4 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries in a car accident, and I had died on the way to the hospital. And after that, when I regained my cognitive abilities, I figured, why stay quiet anymore? It changed everything for my life, but I didn't think that it would get this kind of reception from the public. I thought it'd just be more ridiculed and things like that, but that's not the case. So I really extend thank you to you and everyone who's been so supportive since I came forward.
Rita and I talk about it, and when we have dinner parties and things, it's really strange. And I hope that your ears light up, right, and start burning and ringing. You're talked about a lot in this community, and so many people come up to me and ask me about you.
Are you serious?
Well, of course. Well, you know it, Barry. Stop.
Wow.
But the thing is it's the way that you speak about it with total honesty. I think that's the first part. The second part, you're black, right? And we don't hear from because it's not. I think that this community, Barry, when people look at ufology from the outside and contactees and everything, that it's white men, right? Not even, and
Fabio.
Right?
Yeah.
Look, it's just it's the way that it is, and there is no way that it is just an American thing, or it's just a white thing, or it's just a white male thing. It's a global thing. It reaches across all cultures, all skin colors, all age groups. ET is not selective, and that's really the bottom line here. And so, as we start this conversation tonight, I actually want to start there. Why is it that more black people, men and women, step forward and speak about their experiences? Why don't they do it?
I love it that you're addressing this again, and I appreciate that because that is the only way this gets cured. You know what I mean? Is by addressing this topic. Part one would be to your answer would be one would be the fact that in the media and when dealing with the contact scenario, we don't. I didn't see anyone who looked like me. I had Barney Hill and it was that other brother, Steve. That's about it.
Right.
And outside of that, and Barney didn't have the greatest experience and they were with Grace. I didn't see Grace, so that was, that made it hard for me to come forward and talk about it. The second thing I think would be the indoctrination of religion to a degree. That anytime you're having contact with a non-human or some type of experience like that, it must be demons. So you get thrown into the demonology thing, and I'm seeing so much that right now used to discredit experiencers and contactees by saying whatever beings they're dealing with, oh, they're being deceived, they're devils. And that's something else that makes people not want to come forward. But especially as a black man myself, it was the fact that I didn't see anyone else that looked like me. And on top of that, what I saw in the media didn't conform to my contact experiences, if that makes sense.
No, it does. It certainly makes sense. And I don't want to. Some of the most respected researchers in ufology today, Damon T. Barry, right? Of course, Billy Carson, are two of the most respected. Alexis Brooks, a great host and broadcaster.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah, right? Right? Some of the most respected. And I would have thought that that would inspire others to step forward. And I want to ask you, have members of the black community come up to you and said, hey, thank you for, I've had my own experiences too. Has that happened?
Yeah, and I'd say more even through social media, definitely. And by the way, man, I give you thanks out because there's a lot of brothers and sisters that are talking about you that you're addressing this because we know that you've taken a lot of heat from the community for it.
Yeah,
I appreciate you because the first time you spoke to me when you stepped up at a SETI, that's the first thing you asked me. And so often, Jimmy, people love the information I can present and the fact that I'm a real contactee, but they don't like it when I say I'm black.
Right.
They don't seem to like that. And things seem to go left and they start saying things they don't see color and things that they do. And that's an issue. And the fact that we have people like Alexis Brooks, I interviewed with her a while ago. She's wonderful. That is an encouraging thing. That's why I came forward to at least create a platform where melanin dominant people, not just black, but Hispanic, Asians, everyone feels a little more comfortable talking and seeing that they're not alone. Because we've got 70% of the population right now that I think has had contact of some type. And has filtered it out or won't admit it.
Yeah, you know what? There's no question about that. And also, okay, I'll also say something else very public when it comes to this. Race is a sensitive issue. It doesn't matter what we're talking about, number one. So there's that. And then the second part about it is whenever I hear a white guy, especially like myself, say, I don't see color, I don't see black, and I don't see this, and I don't see white. Well, I call BS on that, okay, because we all see color. And it bothers me because I want to say the same thing, Barry. I want to be able to say I don't see color. I just don't. I've got black friends and I've got Asian friends. I've got these. You know what? Stop with that. That's just not cool, right? But I want to say it too. I do because I don't see color. But then we're in denial of the real truth here because it is an issue. So, okay, and I'm uncomfortable talking about something that should be talked about.
Well, check it out, my friend. It's one thing is that, I'll give you an example. When something that really struck me is the first interview that I did with you on Fade to Black, I was still at the ranch. You had left probably a few days before.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a great interview, and I was very, very glad with it. When I walked out, I got addressed by several people who are still there, a group of people. They said, oh, Barry, that was a great interview, but we're a little upset with Jimmy. And I said, well, about what? They said, well, he was going to the race thing. And I said, you mean for the whole first 90 seconds of the interview? I just looked at him kind of puzzled, like, are you kidding me? That's what you heard? It was very, that's when I realized, like, wow, denial of the situation, sticking our head in the sand doesn't make it any better.
No,
But just bringing people's attention to it to realize what's going on, and then it can change from there. But we can't stick our head in the sand. And I mentioned to you before, and you got me to laughing too much on that one interview. I couldn't almost breathe. But it's true. When I started looking at the type of extraterrestrials, when we go to those that are humanoid, that are often shown by the media, they're always these Nordics, and they always did look like Kevin Sorbo as Hercules, right. Or maybe Fabio, the Fabio workout with Christy Brinkley. I mean, that's fine, but that doesn't do much for what about black extraterrestrials, melanin dominant, different creeds of the humanoid form that come from galactic. That's not ever addressed. That's an issue.
You bring up one of the best points, though, for anybody to say that they would be upset with me speaking about the obvious. Wait a minute here. Let's at least put that on the table and recognize the obvious, and then move on. But don't act like we don't notice, or to hide behind that statement. I don't see color. Yeah, you do. You just don't say that, because that's a lie. That's not cool. And I catch myself too, because I say it myself and I think it myself, but then we're denying the facts of the case. Okay, so now let's get the demonology part of it. Is pretty interesting. The spiritual side, the religious side of why it is an issue, because and I know I mentioned this to you before. One of my dear friends, producer of Fade to Black, his name's Hilton J. Palm, and there's plenty of pictures of him out there. He's a very proud, smart, intelligent broadcaster. He's black, and he lives in South Central Los Angeles, right in the heart of it all. He's got a wonderful family, and he's just an amazing friend. But I had to ask him, and on the show, I asked him about UFOs. And I said, if you saw a UFO, would you go and talk to your family about it? Nope. Would not. And I said, well, why? There's no way in my community that we would ever talk about that. You would be immediately labeled. There's a religious side to this too as well. There's ghosts, the paranormal, and dead people and things that you can't, and you need to be somebody that is a man that is stable. And that was his take, and I think it was an honest take. But it just caused me to step back and go, I wonder why. I wonder why that is, because they're having everybody on this planet is having the same experiences as everybody else.
Yes. And I since we talked last time, last summer, I went to a friend of mine, Florber, and she does a show also. She had me down to Florida. She had the first melanin dominant contact conference. So I spoke there. Ray Hernandez was there. I think you met Ray. Mm-hmm. And she met, and also Sonia Barrett. So it was really just a nice event. By no means was it required that attendees be melanin. And there was all types of people there. But it was really just a nice forum to talk about contact experiences if you're a person of color. Mm-hmm. So the forum that's going on and people like you addressing this, it is changing things, and that's important. It's very important, because right now, if I was, let's say, in my teens and I was having contact experiences, I would be more comfortable being able to get on YouTube and seeing people that look like me, even if it's just a few, and hearing these things being addressed. I may have to search for it really deep, but I could find it, as to where when I was young, it was nearly impossible to find this, to get access to this type of knowledge.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And some of that goes beyond just being ethnic. Some of that goes on the community, just the whole community. I've talked to so many contactees, Jimmy, that are married, say, I didn't tell my wife about what happened. I didn't tell my husband about what happened. I mean, it's bad enough if you see a Sasquatch, people tell me, oh, I saw one of those. I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't tell my wife. What?
Well, me seeing a UFO and talking about it in public, I have no issues with. The day that I see Sasquatch in person, I'm not so sure I'm going to admit to it either. I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. You can talk about UFOs and flying saucers. Sasquatch and the whole Bigfoot thing is another issue altogether in society.
That's something I talk about frequently. Is the last time we did an interview, you talked about the footprints you saw at a SETI. The kids showed you. That's a great story. And then weird things happened to me when I got out there. The very first time I went out there, Jimmy, my brother had called. My brothers are 20 years older than me, and he said, man, you didn't really believe in Bigfoot before you went out there. All the stuff that's happened to you, but you didn't really believe in Bigfoot, did you? Before you went out to that ranch, I said, well, I was curious. I wasn't sure, and then I went out there and got blasted. All sorts of weird stuff started happening to me, starting with feeling like I was being watched about a mile before I got on that property. Getting telepathic. I didn't recognize it as telepathy, but obsessing about looking up albino Sasquatch on YouTube several days before I went out there.
Right.
Weird things like that. I mean, it's just weird stuff like that happens out there that goes a little beyond explanation as far as things we call telepathy and awareness. I don't know what to tell you.
Now, and speaking of Kevin Sorbo, seriously, and Fabio and Christy Brinkley, ETs, why aren't there black aliens?
There most certainly are, but they are very much, the stories of such is suppressed by the media. I mean, openly, because outside of, you've got Norman Bergen, who wrote the Rings of Saturn. He said that actually he saw that there was a ship that came down in some shipyard. He didn't say it was of Saturn, but he said that 8 feet tall brothers got out of there, black people, 7 to 8 feet tall black people got out of there. And he was interviewed by, I think it was that lady from Camelot, Project Camelot. And it's kind of funny because he said, what do they look like? He says, oh, they were black, But that's one of the few people you hear that talked about it. But now that you have people like me and you talking about it and making a gripe about it, all of a sudden now there are whistleblowers coming forward. Oh, I've met every tribe of black people here and there. You know what I mean? That were from inner earth, that were from out there. Now it's becoming popular to act like you know something about it.
So what will it be? So the Nordics being, I always picture Sweden, right? Northern Europe when it comes to the Nordics. As far as a geographical area, I maybe it's true, maybe it's not. It's what I think of first. So, what are we going to call the black aliens, the black ETs? What
melanin dominant ETs goes pretty good. You know what I mean?
Say it again.
What's that?
Say it again.
I said melanin dominant ETs.
Melanin dominant. Okay, the melanins. We'll just go with that.
That's cool.
There were some Nordics. There were some melanins.
It's something like this. I think going back to the last question you asked, something that was brought to me by Peter Maxwell Slattery and a few others, that you had some Aboriginal elders that were providing artifacts that claimed that they were the first people here.
That's right.
But then also they started in Australia, then migrated to Africa.
That's right.
So everybody got mad because it challenged the Africa thing. But nonetheless, it's still dealing with melanin dominant individuals. But then they also said that they were seeded here from the Pleiades, and that their first Pleiadians looked just like them. They were black. And you see, that's something there. And since that has been brought out, I have not heard anything more about it. It's been swept underneath the rug, and all we're still seeing is Fabio. Okay, now, in all fairness, I had to deal with something when I had found out that in my childhood experiences, I have met one of these Nordics. Okay, not of maybe the popular things we hear. I think he was a time traveler, but nonetheless, he was a Nordic. All right, and I couldn't remember it exactly, so I had to wind up eating a little bit of crow on that. All right, but it is what it is. I still we've got all types out there.
Well, I want to set up for when we come back after the break, which we're going to do in a couple of minutes here. But I want to talk about your background and your first contact for everybody that hasn't heard you and I talk before. And it's important that we kind of do the reset, because we're also going to talk about current events and all of the recent stuff that you've been dealing with. And I need everybody to have a solid foundation with your background and your life of contact. And since we're talking about your ethnicity and your background, that also includes your family. And what was your family like during this contact back then? Because you have friends, you have neighbors, you have people that your parents work with, church on Sunday, all of these things. How did you deal with it?
Well, for starters, I, as most contactees, was obsessed with hiding it because I couldn't prove it. I couldn't prove, like, when I wake up at night, not at home, wake up on one of these ships or in this room where they're trying to get me to do things with my mind that are telekinetic and things like that. And it was physical. I was waking up physically in these places, but I couldn't prove it, so I didn't say anything. You know what I mean? And sometimes in childhood, it would also be dreamlike. So in that way, I didn't say a lot. But I did see the first ship I saw. I was with my mother, and she saw it at the age of 7. I just turned 7. And we saw this ship outside of Eastgate Mall, where I live. And then I have a sibling. I have a brother that's a musician. Now, my siblings are all much older than me, but my oldest sibling, he's in his 60s. He's had contact a few times. It's not like mine. It's different, but nonetheless, he's had contact of a type. So he has an understanding. My other brother and sister have not, but they're very accepting, So in that way, that's cool. I've been blessed in that way.
But nothing was discussed, right? Well, I know you had your conversation with your mom, but as far as friends and neighbors and classmates and, like I said, church on Sunday, whatever it was that you guys were doing as a family, all of this was suppressed.
Yeah, I didn't tell anybody about it. I mean, just no. In fact, to be honest with you, when I couldn't find things in the media that conformed to my experiences, I even tried to shut them off and stop them from happening because I couldn't prove anything. And then they did stop for a little while, from about the ages of 13 to about 18. I had one experience in those years. But then after that, they answered my request for more physical contact. And that's what I call adult onset experiences, which took on a whole different toll from me. And that's what I talk about a lot, because they were very much physical. Sorry.
I was going to say, let's take our break right here, and we'll just continue when we come back. Our guest tonight is Barry Littleton. And I do want to remind everybody, tomorrow night is Fader Night, open lines all night long. But tonight, it's Barry. I am your host, Jimmy Church. It's Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Come and join the conversation. Hashtag F2BQ is questions. I'll be right back. Stay with me. You're listening to a preview of Fade to Black. To get the full episode, go to jimmychurchradio.com and get our podcast. Click on the podcast banner or sign up in the membership area for downloadable MP3s. Everything commercial free. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. That's right. Follow me on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. Use the hashtag F2B. Join in on the amazing conversation that's going on right now, all centered around Barry Littleton. Now, Barry, let's turn back the clocks here. Let's tell us about your first contact. and it's fascinating. And believe it or not, Barry, I'm sure that we're going to talk about the what happened on the playground and your little friend. That your life of contact and everything that you've been through is amazing, and the technology you were exposed to. But that first contact is one of the most amazing stories I've heard anybody tell. And so take us through that. What happened first?
Well, the first thing would be I had seen for the first thing, would be that there's this kid that would come by and play with me sometimes, and a lot of this stuff started happening when I was around the age of 7. I was pretty well supervised, but there's this kid that would come by and play with me sometimes, and he would like help me make dams on the curb that would stop the water from going down because I thought it was going to flood the world or something. It was important to me. He would come make these dams with me, and he showed up on the playground one day and stopped these kids from pushing me off a slide, and then went and jumped and went really far, a big jump that scared me. And I told him to go away and not mess with me anymore. And I didn't see him anymore. Okay. Until years later, I wake up and I'm not at home. I'm on board this ship. And on board this craft there's a huge, like a screen. Okay. And I'm looking out this screen. I could see 2 other ships out there, and they're very large. These are craft, and we're over some type of a Rocky Mountain type of pass. It's a snow-topped mountain pass, a cascade. And I can see these ships are pulling what looks like clouds or something into their underbelly. And then on the side of this screen is a being, an insectoid, floating in this very nice uniform. He's kind of hovering over the deck plates, and he's communicating with me telepathically, as did my friend that would come build the dams with me. But as a kid, I just knew that it seemed like nobody else could do the telepathy. And I seemed to take it for granted that he could. You know what I mean? I just didn't think much about it. As a kid, we dismissed a lot of things, But anyway, on board this craft, he begins telling me, I start asking him telepathically, what's going on? And what is this? And and then where is he from? Who is he? I started asking, but I recognized him as the person who had helped me and played with me. And now as an adult, I can tell you why it is I didn't recognize him as being as insectoid as much as being more of a person when I saw him when he's playing with me. I think it says something about what these beings can do to our optical nerves, optically, how they can change and influence what they look like to a certain degree. Okay. Anyway, on this craft, he's floating, and he tells me that the acid rain is very bad for your planet. And we're having trouble sucking up we're having trouble reversing it. Now, amongst other things, when I can't speak for anybody else, Jimmy, but when I'm in the presence of a non-human, whether they be physical or incorporeal, non-corporeal, I ask, what do they want and where are they from? And he started telling me things. He said, you need to go 900 million light years out and then go beyond the exo-space-time continuum. And since you don't know what that means, and he was right, I didn't.
Right. I don't either. So there you go.
Yeah. He said you can start with the 2nd and 3rd planets past Pluto. And then I start asking if he's lying telepathically. I start, trying to probe him a little, because there are no planets outside of Pluto. I knew that much because I liked astronomy. But however, because I was about around 12 when this deal happened. So this is 4 years after my 7-year-old stuff happened. Okay. I start asking about this acid rain and stuff, and he starts telling me that the metals in your atmosphere, the metals and the microwaves, are very dangerous also. And that's a reason why they don't come out of the craft. So that takes it to a whole nother level.
And acid rain at that point, it wasn't even a thing, was it?
No, I didn't know what it was at all. And I was in the 6th grade, and maybe not even a week later, my teacher, old Miss Crow, good teacher, they're oldie but goodie. Anyway, she had us read once a week something called the Scholastic News. I think they still make that, and it was very current events.
Yes, loved it.
And this one, and she did the torture of making one of us stand up and read the main article. You know what I mean? And she chose me that day. And so I got up and I read it, and the article is about the cover, which was the Statue of Liberty on it. And when I start reading it, they start saying the Statue of Liberty was being shut down in parts and people couldn't tour it because they were repainting it due to the damage from acid rain. Right there in words, I saw it. And that's when, I started really tripping. I remember I started probably stuttering, go, acid rain. And everybody started laughing like I was making a joke. It was no joke. I was tripping out because that's when these experiences definitely crossed over from what was happening to me at night into reality. They felt real, they seemed real, but that's when I knew for sure there was no doubt. Okay, so that would be my first experience that really allowed me to know that what was happening to me was real. It wasn't just me being a kid that liked too much Doctor Who and liked too much Star Trek. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and also the insectoid character, which you saw on the big screen, was he your little friend that you were building the dams with?
Yeah, it was him. And that's what I'm saying. For what reason he seemed more just like a kid wearing sunglasses and a dumb hat was riding this stupid Schwinn. He come on this Schwinn all the time. That's what at the few times that I saw him. But I could recognize that it was him, and I could feel him. I could feel the energy of him. But the thing is, he had on this uniform, this white uniform that went just below the knees, and he looked very ancient and very wisdom, I say, would come off of him a lot. So it was still my friend, but it wasn't the same. He didn't feel like the same guy that was making the dams with me, and I knew that he was more than that then. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and did you ask him? Did you go, hey, did you and I used to hang out when I was 7?
Well, no, I didn't ask because I knew it was him, because I know now that was stopping me from freaking out.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm a nervous brother, man. Okay, I'm very nervous when I wake up not at home and when I was in front of non-humans. I think it says a lot when we really come before a non-human. But something about him, I think him and the craft itself kind of exude some type of a vibration that nullifies some of our fear, makes us more able to experience and be more vividly aware. You know what I mean?
I do. And for you, as you started to get confirmation about all of this as you were growing up, you had your mom, how do I want to say this? Your mom actually did a confirmation for you, but she didn't know. Well, and you certainly didn't either. But at that moment, things really came into focus with you. Tell us about the conversation with your mom that day about the sighting over the mall.
That's the darndest thing. By this time I was 30. I was a little over 30 when I would take half a day off. I worked 2 jobs. On Thursdays I go over to my mother's house and eat lunch with her for a little bit before I go to the other job. And I came over and she had these boxes out. She was going to throw away I had my Omnis. I used to really love Omni magazine, a bunch of good stuff in there. But she was going to throw it out. So I was looking through a couple of them. And one of them was this bunch of UFOs, just different types of UFOs. And I was looking through those, and she comes walking by with the laundry basket, and she comes over and points to one. That looks like the one you and I saw. And then she kept walking. And I said, what? I turned around, looked at her, I said, what? And she said, looks like the UFO you and I saw. You remember that? And I said, no, actually, I don't. And then when she started describing, I started drilling her, and my mom was always that patient. But when she actually told me certain things about the craft and what happened, it triggered my memory. To the point where I asked my brother, I said, man, maybe I didn't see that thing. And he said, oh, heck yeah, you saw it, man. You and Mama talked my head off when I got home. That's all you was talking about was that. I remember my mother looks at me and she goes, you, Mr. Star Trek guy with that crazy, weird memory of yours, you've got a creepy memory. How is it you can remember everything, but you don't remember seeing that UFO? I mean, when she described the day, she was taking me across from one store to another. I just gotten a birthday gift for my 7th birthday, and it was, you might remember this, Jimmy. It was a Stretch Armstrong. Do you remember Stretch Armstrong?
We all do. I I never got a Stretch Armstrong. I was a little older, so I guess I'm older than you. So Stretch was about 5 years behind me, but I will say that my brothers both had Stretch Armstrongs.
Well, the thing is, I stretched him. On the first day I had him, he started leaking. And my mother saying, that's some nuclear goo. We're going to take that back. So that's what we were doing that day. And I could remember that, but I couldn't remember seeing this craft until she decisively talked about it a lot and described it. So when I got older, I decided to actually, I know that, especially at that point, the only time I'm missing time in my life is from 2 months after I took 4 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries. And then before that, only when I was dealing with these beings and they interacted with me would I ever be missing any time or had a fragmented memory. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that spawned me to go get a regression to see why couldn't I remember that vividly? Because oddly enough, okay, about a year before this, I had talked to a quote unquote clairvoyant, this local in the city I live. I've been dealing with her for years. I just know her. And she started telling me that, you had a friend that gave you something on board that first craft that you saw as a child with a parent. And I looked at her, I said, look, I've never seen a UFO with a parent. And she looks at me, she goes, I think you have, and you don't remember it because you were interacting with it. They were there observing you. You thought they were just there doing something else, but they were watching you. And that's probably why you can't remember it. But your friend gave you something that was on that ship later on. I'm just looking at her like, okay, right, you new age freak. So I want to believe in doing something else. And then a year later, 2 years later, this happens with my mother. She starts mentioning that. And it's one of those things where you just, certain things will happen in our contact experiences to trigger our memories. Because remembering the event horizon isn't always that easy due to the vibration difference that it occurs on. A lot of these entities their vibration is a lot faster than us.
Your mom, is she still with us?
No, she passed actually almost 5 years ago.
Did she become what it did? Well, I don't think she was part of the community, but was she somebody that was appreciating what you were going through, and of course the sighting that you guys had together? Where was she at this towards the end?
I'll tell you, my mom was very high on the ESP scale, but didn't admit it and didn't like that stuff. If you started mentioning something like that, she'd say, I don't want to talk about that S blank, and to drop that real quick. But she was open. I put it to you like this. When I first started listening to Art Bell, that was in about 1991. He was doing Coast to Coast. He just started it. And my mom's the one that turned me on to that. She said, I know you don't sleep at night, and this guy talks about all the stuff you like.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. And the other part about this, as you're going through this, you did ask for something more physical to happen. And I want to know why you had to ask that question, because up to that point, were you feeling that it wasn't physical, or maybe that it was and you didn't realize if it was, but you needed something to happen for you for confirmation, I guess. Is that why you asked the question?
At the risk of sounding arrogant, all right, I will never lie to you, my friend. One is I wanted confirmation that I could prove it. I wanted to prove it to the world that some stuff was happening to me. And number two, I was going to try to grab something, some object or something,
Sure.
so I could hold on to that, and I could present that to people and say, "You see, this came from there."
Do you remember a movie called Real Men with Jim Belushi and what's his name from? He's great. He's no longer with us, from Three's Company.
Oh, Ritter.
Yeah.
John Ritter.
Yeah, John Ritter. Have you ever seen that movie?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, that's what you're going to watch tonight after the show. Real Men. Okay, it is. It's one of the great UFO films of all time. But in that, in the movie, I'm not going to give anything away, but E.T. gives John Ritter a pen. He gets his pen. right? He gets the ET pen, and you've got to check out the movie and what it means to Ritter, and Jim Belushi too as well. Throughout the movie, this gift stays there. But yeah, I would do the same thing. I would go grab the pen. I'd grab the pen off the desk, off the spaceship. I certainly would. And so that was part of your quest then.
Yeah, it was. I was going to prove the stuff. You know what I mean? I was going to prove this happened to me. Because number one is, and I want to stress this, that I was never involved in any sexual connotation to any of my experiences. I wasn't bullied. Nothing like that happened. None of my experiences were negative. They were all very positive. But the fragmented memories after this missing time, like each time was a little over 4 times. Okay. And I had actually 4 adult onset experiences that involved over 4 hours of missing time. And 3 of them, somebody else was with me. And they saw these craft come up on us, and then they're missing time with me. And we're up here looking at each other. We're missing 4 hours, 4.5 hours of time. And we can see these beings. You can still see some of their faces. I can still see their faces. I can still retain some of the information they gave. And I could see some technology still. And I like technology, you know what I mean? So that was kind of my thing, but that's what I was always able to observe there.
And what year was this, and what city was it outside of? I know you guys were out in the suburbs in farmland.
Outside of Kansas's largest city, which is Wichita. We're about 5-6 miles outside of Wichita. And it was a country area out there, a lake out there. And I had actually drove out there with her, and we were going to, we were just 18, so we're still living at home and stuff. It's like our first year going to college, and I had other minds. I said, we're going to college, other country, and we'll meditate and do that. You know what I mean? But in reality, I had other things on my mind. But where we're doing this meditation, one of these ships materialized. Is kind of when I was looking over this not river, pond. I could see this thing materialized over it, and it's tuning me in. That's when that first happened. And that's when they came closer. And then she saw the ship a little bit later on, and suddenly we're outside of the car. Don't know how we got out of the car, and with all due respect to her, we had 3 experiences together that involved a bunch of missing time, and she wasn't really cool with it, even though it wasn't anything negative. But once you have missing time and you've really seen one of these craft, that's where I warn people. Sky watching is great. I have nothing against it. But one of those craft comes too close towards you, and you're sitting up there, you're missing 5 or 6 hours of time or something, 4 hours. It messes with your life really good. You can't think of much else. You're trying to retain these memories, trying to get them back, you're looking up all different science, trying to figure out and explain what happened to you. Other people have had this happen. It just throws your life in a circle. That's all I'll say.
The first night you had 3 missing time encounters, but the first one where you and only you saw the craft, she didn't see it. I just said she was a she, everybody, okay, who was with Barry. Well, in that you guys aren't in contact anymore, and I don't want to reveal who she is or anything like that, and I know that you don't want to too, but she was a she. The craft, describe what you saw. This was a physical sighting that night. What did the craft look like?
Okay, when it pulses too, okay, it's a saucer first, and it looks like, I would put it maybe about 150 diameter, looked over this pond. But on top of it, it's got a rod, an antenna, and it's got a light on the top of this antenna, a couple different lights, and it's going in circles. And each time it comes towards me, it's going woo, woo. I mean, I can feel this. And she's over there. She's sitting right next to me, and she's meditating. She's in Indian style. She's meditating like that on the seat, which to me is extremely uncomfortable. We'll talk about that another time. Anyway, she's meditating like that, and I say, hey, do you see this thing out here? And she just kind of puts her hand towards my face and goes, hey, man, whatever you're experiencing, that's your thing. Leave me be. So I left her alone. I said, okay. And I just kept watching this thing. You know what I mean? And then I kind of drifted off or something, like I got mesmerized by it. You see what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden I feel a break in this, and I open up my eyes, and she's looking at this craft. I mean, her head is like between the dashboard and the window, and she's looking at this thing. And I said, hey, it's been there a long time. Don't freak out, or you're going to mess it up. And just she started looking at it, looking at me, and she started kind of hyperventilating a little bit. And then it goes boom, it goes like behind us. And then all of a sudden, it's like we're standing outside of the car, and the car's turned around. And we're looking at one of these craft. And for some reason, I don't know how that happened, but I'm thinking, okay, we're out in the country. This must be the sheriff. And it's the helicopter. We're going to get busted out here, man. It's sitting out here too long. But she's going, I think they want us to go up. And I said, are you out of your mind? And then the ship starts, it's just a light at this point. It could be a helicopter. And it goes over to the right, and I can see it's the saucer again. Okay. Then another one comes up that looks more like a golden ball spear. And she's watching that one. But I'm watching this other one. It's the one that had been there already. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is when something that happened that threw me for a real loop. Okay, I'm watching this thing, and it starts flashing like a silver type of deal around it, and then it starts morphing, Jimmy, and it morphs into what looks like a crystalline ball with these stalagmites coming off of it, almost like a molecule connected to another one. There are three of them. Okay, and they're moving a certain way in the sky, and their light is actually emanating from a type of bioluminescence is coming from the inside out. And I was just freaking out. I could see energy coming off of this thing, and I could not accept seeing the ship doing this. And, so then when this experience is all over, I started looking everywhere trying to find out what in the world did I see. I'm looking up Ezekiel and the wheel and everything else. And the only thing I found that later conformed to this, which odd enough was a book I got a year before, J.J. Hertog's The Keys of Enoch.
Right.
In the middle of that book, there's something he calls bipyramidal Merkabahs, and more importantly, tripyramidal Merkabahs. And in that book, he even shows illustrations how some of these things will change and looking like a ship into pyramids and different configurations. Okay, that's what I saw to a degree, definitely. And at least it gave me a frame of reference to what I was seeing. But at the same time, what is it like to be on board a craft that can do that on the outside? It means the outside and the inside are not in the same dimension. That's what it means. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm going way up.
No,
I'm
mesmerized.
What you asked. I get too carried away, man. I'm sorry.
I'm mesmerized and imagining a multifaceted Merkabah inside of another, and changing its geometry and shape. And you're absolutely right. What's going on in the inside of that craft at the same time? What was I've 30 seconds, Barry, if you can.
Yeah.
What was the size of the golden sphere, and what are we talking about here? Is it hundreds of feet? Is it tens of feet? Is it a mile? How big are these craft?
I'd say when it was a saucer, the one I was looking at, it looked like it was 150 feet, maybe wide. And the golden ball she looked at, maybe it looked a little bigger, maybe 200 feet. It was pretty a little bigger. Okay, and when this thing changed into this crystalline Merkabah, I would say maybe 200 feet.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Yeah. Let's take a break right here. Our guest tonight is the one and only Barry Littleton. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Barry's website is barrylittleton.com. The links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. More with Barry when we come back. Stay with us. You have just listened to a full hour free preview of Fade to Black. To get the full show, all archives, just go to our podcast section at jimmychurchradio.com. You can also sign up to be a Fadernaut in our membership area, where we have downloadable MP3s. Go to jimmychurchradio.com. Go Bagley Tappy.